You wake up, reach for your phone, and before your feet even touch the ground, you're already under attack. Not in the way you'd imagine, not with fists or weapons, but with suggestions, comparisons, images. The moment your screen lights up, so does the war against your sense of self. And the dangerous part? You don't even realize it's happening. You scroll and you think you're just passing time, but what you're really doing is absorbing thousands of subtle messages telling you what you lack, what you're not, and who you should have been by now. That's how it starts. That's how the psychological war slips through the cracks. It's not loud, it's not chaotic, it's curated, it's smooth, it's built to look like entertainment, like inspiration, but underneath the surface, it's strategy. You're being programmed to question your own worth every single day. Your confidence is being chipped away not by people directly attacking you, but by algorithms showing you a version of life that makes you feel behind, less than, and forgotten. This isn't paranoia. This is the game, and if you don't see it, you lose by default. You begin internalizing the lie that who you are isn't enough unless you've hit a certain level of success, beauty, relevance, and when your mind begins to believe that, you stop trusting your own pace, you stop trusting your own voice, and that's exactly what the system wants, people who are too distracted by their own perceived inadequacy to ever fully wake up. You think it's harmless when you compare your life to a stranger on a screen, but every time you shrink in response to someone else's highlight reel, you're handing over your peace, your presence, your power. You don't even realize that your entire nervous system is being conditioned to feel unsafe in stillness. You can't rest because rest looks like falling behind. You can't move slowly because slow looks like failure. You're living inside a pressure chamber where silence feels like self-betrayal, and worth is measured in likes, speed, and external praise. And here's the trap. They've made you think that if you just hustle harder, prove more, do more, achieve more, you'll finally earn your peace. But that kind of peace is counterfeit. It's built on performance. It's held hostage by validation. And the second you stop performing, it disappears. That's not peace. That's captivity disguised as ambition. The war you're in doesn't want you to realize that, because the second you do, you become dangerous. The moment you stop needing to chase identity through applause, the system loses its grip on you. When you no longer need to explain yourself, fix yourself, or become palatable to people who never saw you in the first place, that's when you become free. But to get there, you have to notice the programming. You have to start asking, who benefits from me staying insecure? Who profits off my doubt? Who gains power when I stay small? These aren't conspiracy theories. These are honest questions, because the truth is there are entire industries that rely on your low self-esteem, and they'll wrap it in empowerment quotes and aesthetic branding. But if their business model thrives when you feel unworthy, that's not empowerment, that's manipulation. It's not about never using social media, it's about never letting it use you. You have to reclaim the space between your thoughts. You have to start protecting the first 5 minutes of your day like your life depends on it, because mentally it does. That's the moment when you decide, am I starting my day rooted in clarity or chaos, in intention or insecurity? That one choice will echo through everything that follows. This war you're in, it's not just digital, it's emotional. It shows up in the voice that tells you to shrink in the meeting. It whispers when you try to set a boundary. It's there when you second guess your instinct, your worth, your power. It's not always external voices, it's the internal ones they taught you to repeat. But here's the breakthrough. Just because you hear it doesn't mean it's true. And just because it's loud doesn't mean it's wise. The most powerful act of rebellion right now is to think for yourself, to feel fully, to not let this world numb you into passivity or pressure you into performance. You weren't born to be a product. You weren't born to play a role in someone else's illusion. You were born to see, to choose, to stand. And that starts by recognizing where your thoughts are truly coming from and who they're really serving. This war may be silent, but you're not powerless. You don't need to fight it by becoming louder. You win by becoming clearer. by deciding every day to ground yourself in your own reality, not theirs. To wake up and remember who you are before the world tells you who to be. The first step to ending the war is realizing you've been in one. It's not just the outside noise that's messing with your peace, it's the inside noise that you've picked up from years of being shaped by what others needed you to be. That inner voice that questions everything you do, that's not your intuition, it's your conditioning. Somewhere along the way, you were taught to second guess yourself, taught to doubt your gut, taught to seek permission before you could feel confident. And even now, long after the people who planted those seeds are gone, their voices still echo in your mind like background music, quiet but constant. That's the real trick of this psychological war. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It tells you you're too much. Too emotional, too ambitious, too quiet. It makes you shrink yourself so that other people feel more comfortable in your presence. It makes you overthink your truth because you're afraid of how it'll be received. It makes you rehearse conversations in your head, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being seen too clearly. And what makes it even more exhausting is that most of this inner conflict doesn't even feel like conflict. It just feels normal, familiar. It's been there so long that you don't question it. You obey it. You follow its rules. You base your decisions around the version of you that others approved of, not the version that's been trying to break through all along. But that inner voice you've been obeying, it's outdated. It was built to protect you from rejection, from abandonment, from conflict. But now it's become the very thing that's keeping you stuck. You're not that child anymore. You don't need to play small just to feel safe. You don't need to pretend just to be accepted. And you definitely don't need to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations just so they don't feel disappointed. The real war is between who you've been trained to be and who you're trying to become. And it's not an easy fight, because becoming yourself means unlearning 1,000 layers of who you thought you had to be. It means sitting with discomfort. It means letting go of the urge to constantly explain yourself. And most of all, it means being okay with people not understanding your transformation. You're not crazy for wanting peace. You're not selfish for needing space. You're not cold for setting boundaries. You're just healing, and healing looks like disrupting everything that made you ignore your needs in the first place. Healing means saying no without guilt. It means choosing solitude over chaos. It means realizing that some of the people who love you aren't healthy for you. And that's hard, because part of you still wants to hold on to the illusion that if you just change enough, they'll love you the way you need. But let this sink in. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your sanity. What this war wants to do is convince you that your peace is selfish, that your healing is inconvenient, that your silence is a threat. But don't buy into that. People who are invested in controlling you will always interpret your freedom as betrayal. And they'll guilt you for growing, they'll shame you for changing. But here's the truth. That's not on you. That's on them. Your job is not to carry the weight of other people's discomfort with your boundaries. Your job is to protect your peace like it's your most valuable currency, because it is. When you start reclaiming your voice, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel tension in relationships where you were once the pleaser. You'll see who only loved the version of you that was always available, always agreeable, always quiet, and that truth might hurt, but it will also free you, because the moment you stop needing to be understood by people who benefit from your confusion, your clarity becomes unstable. And look, you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be honest with yourself. Every time you listen to your gut instead of your fear, you win. Every time you say, this isn't okay for me anymore, even if your voice shakes, you're taking your power back. And that kind of strength, that kind of mental clarity, it's built over time. One choice at a time, one boundary at a time. You don't have to yell. You don't have to prove. You just have to walk in the truth that who you are is enough, fully, loudly, quietly, authentically. And when the noise gets loud again, as it always does, return to this one truth. Your peace is not up for negotiation. Because the moment you stop apologizing for needing peace, the war inside begins to lose its grip. There's something silent but deeply damaging about the way our modern world pushes us to perform strength even when we're falling apart on the inside. You wake up, you show up, you check the boxes, and somehow, even when you're exhausted, even when your energy is gone, the pressure to appear fine doesn't stop. But here's what many people don't talk about. Pretending to be okay is a full-time job, and eventually, it costs more than it pays. This psychological war isn't just loud arguments or toxic relationships. It's subtle, it's quiet. It shows up in the way you keep overcommitting even when you're burned out because you don't want to let anyone down. It creeps into your self-talk, convincing you that asking for help is weakness, that resting is laziness, that being vulnerable will only make people lose respect for you. So you hold it in, you mask it, you put on your best face and push through, hoping no one notices the storm inside you. But here's the thing, silencing yourself to make others comfortable isn't strength, it's self-abandonment in disguise. We were raised to believe that resilience means never cracking, that success means sacrificing ourselves for the sake of the grind, that emotional control is about suppression, not expression. But that lie has created a society full of high-functioning, emotionally starved individuals. People who look strong on the outside, but can't sleep at night because they're at war with the truth they never gave themselves permission to feel. And if you've been there, if you're there right now, let me say this, your emotions are not your enemy. Your feelings aren't a flaw in the system, they are the system. They're the compass, the signal, the information that tells you where you're out of alignment with your values, your peace, and your truth. But you've probably been taught to numb that, to override that, to keep going even when your soul is begging you to pause. The result? You start to normalize dysfunction. You call stress drive. You call anxiety productivity. You call emotional exhaustion just life. And in doing so, you disconnect from yourself. You start chasing validation instead of peace. You start looking outward for answers that were always within. And no one can see that you're barely holding it together because on the outside, you're the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never complains. But the truth is, people can't help the version of you they don't see. And if the version you're constantly showing is one that hides pain just to seem unshakable, you end up denying yourself the support, the care, the healing you deserve. This internal war becomes more dangerous the longer you fight it alone. Because eventually something breaks. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's your motivation, maybe it's your spirit. And it's not because you're weak. It's because even the strongest minds need space to feel. Even the toughest hearts need room to soften. And even the most focused individuals need permission to pause. It takes courage to stop performing strength. It takes a different kind of bravery to say, I'm not okay right now, and that's human. Because in a world obsessed with image, authenticity is rebellion, vulnerability is resistance. Rest is revolution, and healing, real healing, begins the moment you stop pretending you don't need it. You're allowed to break, you're allowed to cry, you're allowed to not have it all figured out. The pressure to be perfect is a lie, and you don't owe anyone your silence just to keep them from feeling uncomfortable about your truth. You've carried enough, you've held it in long enough. It's time to stop shaming yourself for needing what everyone else secretly needs too: peace, rest, a moment to breathe without judgment. This war wants you to believe that your softness is a liability, that your gentleness makes you a target, that your emotional truth is a weakness that will be used against you. But what if the opposite is true? What if your softness is your strength? What if your honesty is your armor? What if your ability to feel deeply is not something to fix, but something to protect? Because healing doesn't always look like rising. It often starts in the falling, in the slowing down, in the deep exhale where you finally admit that you're tired of pretending, that you're ready to stop carrying what was never yours to hold, that you're done explaining your needs in a world that only praises the people who ignore them. The day you choose to honor your emotional truth, You don't become weaker. You become whole. And nothing is more powerful than a person who has stopped apologizing for being real. Because when you stop performing strength, you finally get to feel what true strength really is. There's a moment in every person's life where silence becomes louder than noise. When you stop arguing, when you stop trying to explain, when you realize the real battle isn't outside of you, it's within, that's the day everything shifts. Because the loudest part of the psychological war you're fighting isn't what people say about you. It's what you say to yourself when no one else is listening. That quiet voice that questions your worth, your strength, your direction, that internal whisper that keeps telling you you're not enough unless you're doing more, proving more, earning more. And that's not just a mindset problem, that's emotional warfare. This war doesn't ask for your permission. It sneaks in slowly. It looks like comparison scrolling at 2 a.m. It looks like the guilt you carry when you rest. It looks like questioning whether you're lovable when people leave. And it sounds like maybe if I was better, they would have stayed. These are the invisible wounds we walk around with. Wounds we don't show because we've been taught to hide pain behind performance, to smile through struggle, to keep moving even when every part of us is begging for a pause. But here's the thing, your silence in this war doesn't protect you, it drains you. Every time you ignore what your heart is trying to say, you abandon a piece of yourself. You bury your truth to protect a version of you that never needed to be perfect, just real. And slowly that performance becomes your personality. You start to believe that you're only as valuable as you are agreeable, that your peace can be sacrificed for someone else's comfort, that your voice only matters when it's saying what others want to hear. And that's the trap of emotional suppression disguised as being strong. You're fighting a war where your peace is the target, where the moment you begin to protect it, people start calling you selfish, where setting boundaries is labeled as changing, when in reality, it's just choosing yourself for once. Because when you start saying no, when you stop shrinking, when you finally raise your standards, people who benefited from your silence will call it attitude. But don't let that distract you. You're not rude, you're not cold, you're just done bleeding for people who never brought you a bandage. What you have to understand is that healing will confuse the people who were never meant to come with you. When you stop reacting, when you start detaching, when your energy no longer feeds their control, they'll try to pull you back into the chaos. And that's when the war intensifies. That's when you'll be tempted to go back to the old you just for the sake of peace. But don't mistake old habits for comfort. Don't confuse familiarity with alignment. Just because something feels normal doesn't mean it's right. You're not obligated to lose yourself just to make a relationship work. You're not required to destroy your peace just to maintain a connection. If being around them feels like walking on emotional eggshells, that's not love. That's survival. And you were not created to survive your own relationships. You were meant to grow in them, to feel safe, seen, and whole in them. But you can't do that if your emotional truth is constantly being silenced just to keep the peace. Because peace that demands your silence isn't peace, it's control. So protect your peace like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. Emotional peace isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the foundation of your clarity, your confidence, your creativity. When your mind is loud with chaos, you can't hear your intuition. You can't hear what your soul is trying to say. But when you reclaim your peace, everything becomes clearer. You start to feel again. You start to trust yourself again. You start to move from a place of power instead of fear. And that's what this war is really about, getting you to distrust yourself, to second-guess your instincts, to believe the narrative that you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. But let me say it clearly, you're not too much. You were just never meant to fit into the small version of yourself that made other people comfortable. And when you rise out of that box, when you take up emotional space, some people will fall away. Let them. Your healing will threaten the people who only knew how to relate to your brokenness. Your growth will irritate those who only felt powerful when you felt small. That's not your fault. And it's not your job to dim just to be digestible. You don't owe anyone the version of you that kept the peace at the cost of your own. So stop apologizing for the boundaries that keep your heart safe. Stop explaining the silence that's protecting your mind. Stop defending the decisions that guard your energy. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not bitter, you're better. You're not difficult, you're done. The day you choose peace over performance is the day the war begins to end.